Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. With the recent meta update here in Warzone, we saw some significant changes to a handful of different weapons, and in turn, now some of the fastest TTK guns are a bit different. We've got some surprise choices, some obvious choices as well, and so today we are breaking down 5 of the fastest killing guns we currently have in the game. As we get into it, if you enjoy the video, if you find it helpful at all, do me a favor, drop a like on it. It would be really appreciated. And if you are new here, you want to guarantee we're always up to date with absolutely everything going on in COD, be sure to hit that subscribe button for the latest news, updates, meta breakdowns, and everything in between. So we're gonna get the obvious one out of the way here early, because it is by far the fastest TTK gun in the game. It's also probably the most unrealistic at the same time though, the Lachmann 7.62 in full auto. They haven't touched this thing in like 2 seasons ever since it was buffed to be just absolutely broken in full auto. We're talking a 788 millisecond TTK at 67 meters, which is so far away from everything else you could possibly compare it to at that range. It's nuts. The thing is though, at 67 meters and even at 50 meters, 40 meters, there's so much recoil on this thing that's more of an unrealistic TTK because you're gonna miss shots a lot. Now, if you can really master the control, it's still gonna be dumb fast, like just broken TTK, but it's hilarious that this gun is so good, but not at the top of the absolute meta list just because it's balanced out by its recoil. The setup here obviously is going to be built to control it as best we can. We got the atop V4. If you have a different optic that you prefer more, always go ahead and run that instead. 50 round drum because you don't want to have to run out of ammo when you are missing your shots, so having the max option there is of course great. The Ripper underbarrel is going to help out with that stabilization and stability and overall make that pattern a lot more predictable for recoil. The Bore 490 is going to help out that horizontal bounce a ton, and this means that your pattern becomes a little bit more vertical, and that's a lot more predictable than the horizontal bounce, which is also super nice. Then we got the Rat Barrel. This is straight up for better control, and it adds in some velocity since we don't have high velo ammo on here. It's not a ton, but it's something, and it will help out ultimately in the mid to long range. Ultimately, this is a mid-range gun at best, unless you're cheating and you're using a Cronen or something, and then you can control it over long range. But the recoil on this thing is nuts. So is the TTK though, in theory. Now next up, and by the way, all this data is coming from true game data in sim.gg, so that's where the TTK numbers and values are coming from. But the Squall, specifically in semi-auto, it has about a 1050 millisecond TTK at 52 meters, which might seem slow. You're over 1000 milliseconds. It's a second long TTK. However, compared to other weapons in the game at that distance, this is actually the fastest option there. So its semi-auto version here is a little bit harder to actually master because it depends more on you, the user, spamming it and staying on target. But if you can do so, thing is gonna rip right now in the current meta. It's definitely back to the OG Squall meta that we had a while back. Again, we got the atop V4 and the 50 round drum, just like over on the Lachmann. Kind of a very similar setup in all honesty. We got the Ripper underbarrel as well, and this in semi-auto is super clutch because it's gonna help with that recentering speed and that recenter stabilization, so that when you spam, you're gonna be centered quicker and more frequently after shooting, so it's easier to stay on target basically. Bore 490 helps out if you ever flip in between full auto and semi-auto, and even if you're spamming in semi-auto, there is some horizontal bounce, so that helps limit that as well. Then I go for the 6.8 barrel. Better range, better velocity, better control as well, better pizza here too, because we got that 3-in-1 combo. Again, just optimizing that mid to long range there. Definitely a boring top tier gun at this point, but there's no denying that its stats are pretty crazy right now. Now this may be a bit of a surprise one, but the Icarus actually is a top TTK option over the mid to long range. We're looking at about a 1015 millisecond TTK at 63 meters, which is very impressive, and this is a slept on gun. A lot of people overlook the Icarus for maybe the RAP, the RAL, the HCR, but honestly, this thing is relatively easy. Its control is super manageable, and that'll be reflected in this build here that's not all super heavy on control based. It's also basically just a heavy M4 at the same time too, so it's familiar for sure. It is an LMG, so it's a bit slower, but that's sort of the trade-off that you get for it having some decent power over range. Again, we got the atop V4. No magazine here just because 75 is pretty sufficient with this fire rate. Instead, I go for high velocity, just gonna feel more reliable over the mid to long range. Ripper underbarrel, yet again, for all the same reasons as before. I go for the Echoless 80 suppressor in this case instead of a heavier one like Harbinger. Now, you could upgrade to Harbinger if you want. It's going to be a tad bit slower with the ADS, but it will offer a bit more control rather than Echoless, which is just velocity and just range, no control added there. Then I also go for the Cold Forge barrel, which doesn't like me having to inspect the tuning, but this is going to help out the range and velocity. We obviously tuned to enhance that, and a little bit of recoil steadiness just because this doesn't offer that outright. But overall, like I said, I think people sleep on this gun. Most players probably haven't even tried it outside of like leveling it, so Would recommend jumping in and seeing how you feel about this, because if you can master it, it's pretty rewarding. Now, the Chimera is a close range beast and actually has the best TTK out of any of the mid to close range rifles or sniper support style rifles in the game. We're looking at a 718 millisecond TTK basically throughout that early range, 15 to 20 meters there. It's got a really spicy TTK, and it's going to melt compared to other weapons like the Advance or the Razorback, so on and so forth. Just a really nice aggressive mid-range close range style rifle here, and this build is totally meant for just the close range. There is more of a sniper support build that we've covered before, so if you're more interested in extending out to the mid-range 30-40 meters, you might want to go and check that out. But overall, this one is nice and aggressive, really SMG like in a lot of ways. Bruin flash rear grip for that sprint to fire and ADS. We got the 45 round mag, your basic extended mag, 7 milliwatt laser for the faster ADS and sprint to fire, Vorpal barrel for the better movement speed and ADS speed. Then lastly, I go for the Tango underbarrel. This is a bit more of an aggressive underbarrel that helps out with steadiness, some hip fire if you're transitioning between ADS and hip fire a lot. That said, you could swap this out for maybe like the Ravage stock for some better mobility, even an M13C stock, a compensator if you wanted to, overpressured ammo. There's a lot of different ways you could actually go through and build this, and it's going to be good in the close range pretty much no matter how you do it. And lastly, we got one of my absolute favorite guns in the game at the moment, the Vel 46, aka the MP7. This thing is creeping up in the meta slowly but surely. It's been buffed a handful of times repeatedly, and it's towards the top of the SMG list. Now, we're looking at a 650 millisecond TTK at 12 meters, which isn't crazy far, but when you compare that to the other meta SMGs, the ISO, the MP5, so on and so forth, this actually has a much better initial damage range than those options. So if you're playing a bit more SMG sort of sniper support style, the Vel is going to be a fantastic option. But even just as an aggressive secondary for a rifle or an LMG, this is right there with competing with the best of the best, which is super nice to see. It also just feels so natural and so easy. It's low recoil. Anyone can pick this thing up and just fry with it. I got the RXT stock for just straight up better mobility, Soldier rear grip for better mobility as well with the ADS and sprint to fire. Same deal with the 7 milliwatt laser, 50 round mag. If you want to jump up to 60, feel free to do so. It's just a little bit slower, but not a deal breaker by any means. Then lastly, I got the KT85 compensator just for some added vertical and horizontal control, especially if you're fighting, you know, 15, 20, 25 meters with this thing. It'll make it a lot easier to stay on target as opposed to some other subs where you have to run a different option there. They might bounce around a little bit more. Like, this thing is very straightforward, sort of point and shoot laser beam style gun that works really well. In the later close range, early mid range, I just love the feel of it. That being said, those are 5 of the fastest TTK and best TTK weapons in Warzone right now. That's going to wrap things up. If you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, drop a like on it. It would be seriously appreciated. Hopefully this video helped you guys out with the screenshots and everything so you can get your build in game ASAP. And if you guys are new here, you want to guarantee you are always up to date with absolutely everything going on in COD, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your way out. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I will catch you guys later. Peace out.